Hey, everybody, welcome back to Women of Words. I am your host, Taya,
And I'm your other host, Heather.
and we have an interview today. We have an awesome story of resilience that we're going to share. So we'd like to welcome Portia Young to the podcast. Hi, Portia.
Hi, good morning.
Welcome.
So we are going to get into Portia's story. So let's dive right in. Tell us a little bit about who you are, where you grew up, and what your life was like before.
Yeah. So I was raised as in like a very tight-knit religion. It was definitely generational, so that's all I knew. I was born over in Mount Vernon. And then when I was about 6 or 7 years old, we moved to California for my dad's work. And that was like literally the biggest shock to me. I moved there and I actually met one of my best friends that I'm still best friends with now, and I ended up marrying her brother, my husband
Oh,
now.
nice.
So yeah, we've known each other since I was 7 years old. But yeah, I grew up most of my life over in Orange County in like a small suburban bubble. We ended up finding our community there, and so we were just around like-minded people who had the same values and morals, family, and grew
Mhm.
up, had a decent childhood for what it was. So
And then how'd you end up back in Washington?
So we actually moved, and this is kind of how I feel like you had there. Like we moved back and forth so much, partially for my dad's work and partially just because my mom missed family. So we moved to California when I was 7, moved back to Washington when I think I was 11, literally lived there for 6 months. Yeah, so we moved back and forth quite a bit. My dad, when I was 11, was just like too depressed from the lack of sunshine. He's like,
Mhm.
we gotta go back. And so we moved back to California. And then I kid you not, sophomore year, my dad took me to Red Robin. We'd never have gone to Red Robin in my life. Sat down and was like, we're moving to Washington. And I was like, this is a joke. How many times can you do this? And I remember just like crying, thought my life was over. And then um one of the guys like felt really awkward and bad and like came and brought me a sundae, and I was like sitting there like 16, like having to go back to Washington. And then of course we moved to Washington and there's Red Robins everywhere, and that's where people want to go. My dad thought he was smart, like taking us to a place that we didn't usually go, but just when they're not like, I feel like especially in Mount Vernon, it's like, let's go to Red Robin. Like,
Oh, yeah.
Right. It's
That
like
was the
it's like a
shit going
fancy.
there.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
let's go out to
The
eat.
unlimited fry basket. Are you kidding
Yep.
me?
I know. So I
Mm-hmm.
was like, okay, cool.
Cool.
We just gonna hang out here all the time now.
Right.
Oh,
It's not that
gosh.
special.
So you're back in Washington now as a teenager. And what was going on in your life then?
This was definitely one of probably the most pivotal and hardest times of my life. Moving back and forth was really hard on me. Just finding friends that I connected with, feeling like I belonged, even the culture shock back and forth. And I moved back. I was this California girl. I went to a rural school. Where people actually were driving trucks because they needed to. They were wearing Romeos. Like I just stuck out like a sore thumb. And yeah, it was really difficult, even just making friends at the high school,
Yeah.
regardless of me sticking out more because of my like religious background. I definitely felt very lost. I felt like I didn't belong when my best friend was in California. And I didn't really have that many friends within our community that were my own age. Pretty much my whole upbringing, I always kind of got along with people who were either younger than me or older than me. So yeah, I didn't really have like a friend group like I would have liked to, I think, around 16 and 17. So yeah, I definitely started struggling with pretty severe anxiety, and I would get like anxiety attacks before school every day. Um, and that's kind of when my depression kind of started, and I was like, what is wrong with me? Like I thought I was just sad because I moved. Maybe the weather, like I don't know.
Yeah.
yeah, I started getting to the point where I was like, there's something wrong with me. And it took me a little bit to kind of reach out to my parents and be like, I need to go to the doctor and kind of see what's going on. But
Yeah.
yeah, it was definitely a tough time for sure.
Did you end up on any sort of like medication at that point when you talked to your parents?
Yeah, and that was a
Mhm.
whole other, I feel like, wild ride, was finding the right
Yeah.
medication. Um, just with being that young and having even just your hormones all over the place, not fully knowing who you are. So just like not even feeling like I had a baseline.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, I think I went on like 3 or 4 antidepressants until they found one. And it was actually, they were like, oh, all of a sudden, sometimes your family members like are on one and you can be successful on the same one. Like if you guys are like related.
Mhm.
And I was like,
Right.
oh yeah, great to know. Like, but yeah, so that was really hard because I was like, I would feel really, really numb and like I didn't like I had no feelings.
Mhm.
Mm-hmm.
And then there was ones that made me feel really moody. Yeah, so it was definitely a struggle.
Yeah. So then you got married young.
Mhm.
Do you want to tell us about that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so I got married very young. I couldn't even legally drink at my wedding.
Wow.
Which is par for the course for we were in the same community, this insular religion,
Yes.
and it's very common because sex before marriage is very frowned
Like,
upon
no.
and not allowed, right? And so you end up with a lot of young people getting married for essentially the wrong reasons. Not that your marriage was for the wrong reasons, but typically it's a big factor for people when it really shouldn't be.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was old at my 24 getting married.
Yes,
So
Heather was a
so
crone at her wedding.
Great.
I was.
You are so old. I can't.
I know.
24, God.
Correct.
Yeah, definitely a very common thing. All of
Mhm.
my friends at the time were like, I literally had like, I was in like 5 weddings within like the same year because
Yeah.
everyone just got married young. And yeah, so I actually had a boyfriend when I was 16, and then we moved to Washington. Um, and we kind of tried to do the long distance thing, and that was just hard, not really working out. Obviously, there was a lot of just like restrictions within our community on like how to date.
Mhm.
So that made it pretty difficult. I ended up breaking up with him due to pressure from my family. And then I kind of freaked out and was just like, okay, like I don't want to lose my family. I don't want to like go down this bad path. And I freaked out and was like, okay, I'm just gonna like, I don't understand this, but I'm just gonna throw myself all in. So I threw
Mhm.
myself into our religion, kind of doing all the like checklist things. And then I met my first husband, who was also within the community. And that's when I finally started to like make friends and kind of create that friend group. So I was just like, yes, like I belong, like this is so good. And I was 18 when I met him. And we even like we dated for 2 years before we got married, which that was even like everyone was
That's also frowned
Yeah.
upon.
like, let's
Too
go.
long.
Yeah.
So yeah, and I got married at a very young age. My husband was very charming, spiritual, very well loved within our community. Definitely kind of that perfect boy next door.
Yeah, you
And
talked about the checklist, right? Like he
yeah,
checked
yeah,
every
he
box.
checked all the boxes for
Mhm.
myself, for my family. So I was like, all right, this is what I'm supposed to do. I gotta, and we were like really, we were good friends, but I didn't have that same like passionate love. But I was like, I'm young. I don't know. Like
Yeah.
maybe that's not real.
Well, and you talked about breaking up with the long distance boyfriend. And you
Mhm.
didn't break up with him because you no longer loved him. You were getting pressure from family to not like push boundaries and take it too far. Right? So you still had that affection in your heart for this guy.
Yeah. No, I was like hopelessly in love with him,
Yeah.
and both myself and like my family are like, you're young, you'll
Find
it's
someone
normal,
else.
you'll get over it kind of thing. And
The boyfriend from California, was he also in the religion? He
yes.
was. Okay.
Um
Gotcha.
But they were kind of like, unfortunately, they got kind of compared, even though it's like not always fun, but he was kind of like the black sheep and
Yeah.
the
And
sheep kind of thing.
mhm.
So yeah, my family really loved him because we did grow up together, but he wasn't checking all of the boxes in the sense of like spirituality. And yeah, he was obviously, they thought he was kind and nice, but and we actually were kind of more rebellious in our dating. And because we were long distance, we were like texting and Skyping when Skype was a thing and everything. And then my dad's phone got connected to my phone through like the Apple, and he let it go on for like a whole day. And me and my husband were definitely, sexting things that you don't want your dad to see. And then I like walked by in the kitchen and I like saw his phone and I'm like, why? Like I saw his name on my dad's phone and I was like, what? Like, what are they talking about? And I was
Oh
like,
God.
okay. So I had to like
Whoops.
go my tail tucked between my legs and figure
Yeah.
that one out. And that's definitely when I got kind of that scared, like, I'm
Yeah.
gonna like get
Mhm.
kicked out or something.
Were you disciplined for that, like in the religion?
No, because I wasn't baptized.
Ah, okay. Yeah.
And my dad at the time, they were more relaxed, I would say. So they just disciplined me in the sense of like within the family. I was 18 at that point too. So he was like, if you're 18, you can make your own choices. Like if you want to leave our house, you can leave our house and go do what you want, or you can get your act together and stay.
They issued you that ultimatum, right? It's
Yeah.
them or him.
Yes, exactly.
Damn.
And I didn't really realize at the time that was happening. But
Mhm.
when I look back on it now, I'm like, oh, whoa, like I basically was like, you're going to get kicked out if you don't follow the rules.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I'm glad I didn't realize that fully at the time. Yeah, so I panicked and I ended up marrying the right person.
Quote
I,
unquote.
yeah, I was a
Yeah.
Yeah.
pioneer. Dedicated my time to volunteer work for 70 hours plus a month.
And you ended up getting baptized, right?
Yeah,
Okay.
I ended up getting baptized. I mostly did it because I was getting backlash for not being baptized and wanting to get married.
Oof. So
Crazy.
I could talk about like every like stage and subject for like hours.
I know. Okay, so yeah. What was early marriage like and when did things turn?
So I think what's really hard is we did date for a long time and I felt like I really, really knew this person because we did. We spent so much time together. I mean, I was pioneering at the time, so he would come with me in our volunteer work. We spent a lot of time together. Um, but we never obviously got to spend time alone and have the
Mhm.
same like quality conversations that maybe someone would be able to today or
Yeah.
how I would be able to today.
Yeah, because you always have to have a chaperone. You have to have someone with you.
So it's
Hmm.
kind of
Mhm.
like, I don't know, it's like you just don't want to talk about the harder things when there's another person there.
No. Yeah.
Yeah.
I felt like I really knew this person and I was like, okay, like I know this person, like this is kind of the right and safe choice. It felt, even though I still had my doubts, I still had feelings for my husband now. And then I got proposed to by him. We had gone in our voluntary work all day, which was like so long. And then we actually went over in Anacortes and that's where he proposed. But I remember when he proposed, it didn't feel right. It just
Mm.
felt kind of like I was like, I was expecting like more, but I was like, okay, I'm just gonna be like humble and simple, and maybe I'm just wanting something extravagant or whatever. So yeah, we got engaged and then we got married like I think within like 4 months or something,
Mm.
pretty quick. So the first 6 months of our marriage were super fun. We hung out with friends all the time. We went on vacations. I felt like I was love bombed. Like just everything felt so good. And I was just like, okay, like I made the right choice, even though I had these like voices in the back of my head and some of my doubts. And so that like really kind of solidified that for me. And I felt like, okay, we're good. And then like 6 months in, I feel like more of the character flaws were coming out, kind of the harder conversations, and it just kind of plummeted. I was so young and I didn't know how to even communicate what was going on, and I still had feelings for my husband now, which I was very transparent with. And that definitely got in the way, and I think that created a lot of resentment and anger,
Mm-hmm.
and control issues,
Mhm.
because of an insecurity that had brought on.
Yeah.
Um, and I definitely feel like I kind of my therapist always says like I like disassociated, like I just like put up with everything that was happening, whether it was pressure to show up a certain way in our community or sexually, or also just like very controlled in like what I wore and how I presented myself. And those kinds of things were kind of going off in my head. Like, this doesn't feel right, but they were red flags. Like, so it's like so obvious now that they were red
Yeah.
flags. But at the time it
Mhm.
was like, oh, this is like masked kind of by what our expectations were of us in our community, and also what a marriage was like too.
Do you feel like you were not prepared for these situations, right? Like, yes, you were young, but also in our community, there were, like you said, expectations of marriage, and there is a set role a woman plays and a set role that a man plays. And
Oh yeah.
so, in your role as a woman, things might not feel right, but maybe you don't, well, not maybe, you are not to speak up about it, basically, right?
Yeah. Yeah, it's definitely kind of that traditional head of the household, submissive
Mhm.
wife kind of role.
Hmm.
And it's definitely modeled by, I feel like I mean, at least for me and also for my ex-husband, modeled by our parents. And that's really all we knew. And for me, I was like, this doesn't feel right and this sucks, but this is what it is. Like
Yeah.
Yeah.
this is how
And
marriage is supposed to be.
Yeah.
and divorce is not an option, right?
No.
Like
No, no.
divorce is they don't do that. Uh and like you will face a lot of backlash if
Mhm.
you decide to get divorced. So when did you know like enough was enough, and how long did you stay in that relationship?
Stayed in the relationship far too long, I feel like. We were 4 years married, and it got to it kind of started happening around 2020. I feel like
Mhm.
I threw myself into my work and kind of tried to just numb everything in different ways. I was running races,
Oh,
and throwing myself into work, and that was my life, that was my focus, that was like how I was surviving. And I ran so much, I was like so teeny, like I just like when I look back on it, I'm like, wow, like that poor girl. But yeah, I it got to the point where I was like home with him more, and I
because of
couldn't run
COVID.
away. Yeah,
Hmm.
that started happening, and I couldn't run away from a lot of the things. And so kind of these traits and abuse kind of came up more frequently. So before it was like here and there, and I could kind of make excuses for it, or I'm such like a feeler, and I like even like tortured souls. I'm like, oh, like even though they do something that's maybe like not so great, like they have good intentions. Like I just always
Mhm.
kind of um
You excused it.
yeah, excuse the behavior. And then once I was in my face and it was happening frequently, I was just kind of like burnt out. Kind of I was very low. Even like my family was like, I would go on walks with my dad or my mom, and they'd be like, "Are you okay? Like what is going on?" I That's kind of when I was like, I have to do something,
Hmm.
because I'm
Mhm.
not gonna survive if I keep going. My mental health was horrible. Wasn't eating. and working out excessively.
Mm-hmm.
I was just so stressed, and I didn't feel like I had a way out, honestly,
Yeah.
because divorce wasn't a thing, and I had this tight-knit community that I've built pretty much my entire life that made it feel very impossible to get out of my situation without any repercussions.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and he, he put on a very good front. And so were you afraid that if you went to the community and said, hey, this is happening, do you think you would have been believed?
Yeah, I think about that a lot, and I honestly feel like no, I wouldn't have been
Yeah.
believed, and I don't know if that was the reason why I didn't kind of go that route,
Mm-hmm.
but I mean, I still feel that way
Yeah.
today, too,
Yeah.
kind of like I'm not believed for.
Yeah.
I mean, not a lot of people don't really even know my story, but I think I'm villainized for sure,
Yeah.
unfortunately.
Well,
But
here's,
Right.
the reality is I knew you during this time and I had no clue. I didn't know you well, but had someone told me that was happening, I would have been like, no way. No way. They're like the cutest couple. She's so perfect. She's so adorable. Like, there's no way. And so it's a testament that like people can put on a face and you don't know what's happening behind closed doors. So yes, give people grace, but also believe them when they speak up because you don't know.
yeah, no, that's so true. And I mean, everyone's going through something different, and
Mm-hmm.
just because you don't know that means nothing.
Yeah.
People aren't open or don't know how to communicate what's going on. Like,
Or scared or
yeah,
stuck or, yeah.
Yeah.
So,
definitely don't judge a book by its cover.
no.
Yeah.
So you got out. How'd you do it?
hmm I basically had a bunch of like serious conversations with my ex, because I wanted to be very honest and transparent and know that I did what I could to kind of save our marriage in a sense. And then once that was not happening or an option, I was like, I'm just going to be honest and I'm going to go and I'm going to leave this, but I'm going to know that I was truthful throughout the whole process. And I basically told them I'm still in love with my husband now.
Mm-hmm.
I don't feel like we, are meant for each other. I don't I also just don't want to be in this religion. I don't want to live my life for other people.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't want to be a people pleaser anymore. I felt like I didn't even know who I was and I didn't even know what I wanted. And I wanted to find out.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I decided to do all of this, regardless, and that of my husband now. But weirdly enough, he reached out to me and was like, "Hey, I'm still in love with you. I might be too late. I don't know, but I've like had a lot of time to think about it and like you're my person and if I don't try, then I'm going to like kick myself
Regret.
basically." And I had reached out to him times before and he was so like I think just hurt from our first breakup. He was just very like kind of guard up.
Mm-hmm.
So he's like, I lied all those times. I still love you. But he's like, I finally like came to kind of an epiphany of like you're the person that I want. And I was like, well, funny enough.
Funny you should say that.
Yeah. I was like, I'm leaving my ex-husband. And I was like, I don't really know what I want from you right now because I'm leaving a relationship. But he also was just a really, really good friend. We've all kept in contact our whole life. Our families are very close.
The men both knew each other,
Yes.
right? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, they knew each other. No, I remember the first time they met, they both told me, I wish I didn't like them as much as I do.
Would have made it easier to hate him.
But yeah, so yeah, they knew each other, and this is when 2020 was all happening, and then all of a sudden we got all this like news like that the world's gonna shut down and everyone like can't leave their houses, and I'm like, I literally do not want to be stuck here. And he was like, pack your stuff, I'm coming to get you, and we're gonna figure this out.
So did you tell him what was happening in your marriage? Or were you just like, I'm leaving, and he's like, that's enough, I'll take it?
Yeah, no,
He knew.
actually, he didn't even know what had happened in our marriage in terms of verbal abuse, sexual abuse, and like just like that high control environment. I don't think I fully was able to express to him until we were like a year in a relationship, and when
Okay.
I just broke down, and I was like, this is what happened, and like, you saved me and you have no idea.
No. Gosh, I've like the craziest goosebumps, Portia. So
I know how that all worked out.
I know.
The timing and everything is crazy.
Yeah,
Mhm.
so crazy. And that's when I was like, I have to go, and I was like, I have to do therapy. This is a lot. I didn't even kind of realize the extent of my past relationship, of kind of the extremity of everything. And
Yeah.
I was like, I need to go to therapy. This is what happened to me, and I need you to support me. So I went to my first therapy appointment, and I was terrified because I had tried to go to therapy with my ex, and there was someone told him somewhere that therapists just encourage divorce if you're not compatible. So we never went the therapy route. So I was scared because it was just kind of something that wasn't super encouraged. We were supposed to look to scripture rather than men.
Yeah.
So yeah, but I started my first therapy appointment. I was terrified. It was super hard. And I literally did it every week for maybe like 3 years. And I still see my therapist, the same one today.
Oh,
Yeah.
wow.
Yeah. But yeah, that has helped me so much. And I don't, um, I've kind of been having these like new revelations of kind of the type of trauma that I experienced and the reality of what has happened,
Mhm.
too, that because I feel like I was, and I still struggle with it. I protect my ex-husband very much. I try and protect their reputation, and it seemed, I feel like I was almost fooled, like, because everyone else was like, he's perfect. I was like, he's perfect. What happened didn't happen.
Yeah. So not only were you leaving this very toxic, bad relationship, but you also lost your family when you decided to leave.
Mhm.
So that, I know that to me speaks of the extremeness that you were in, and that it was worth it to you to lose your family to get out of that situation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Dang.
Damn. Yeah.
Haven't even put that one together.
Oh, Portia.
Taya has some wise words. I don't know
I
if it's
know.
from therapy or just her brain, but
I don't know.
yeah.
Damn.
Um,
One thing that struck me in your notes was the loss of autonomy,
mhm.
and finding that. And that, I think, is an interesting concept, because I had never honestly thought about it until you had brought it up, and like, oh yeah, that is a thing that we weren't really allowed to have.
Mhm.
And so what was that process like for you, in like maybe coming to terms with like, I want to be my own person, but I can't, or finding it, or, what was that like?
Yeah. I feel, which, I mean, like I've mentioned before, I felt like an extension of my ex-husband. So what I did with my life always kind of complemented what he wanted for his life and for our life. I never really got to do anything that I was passionate about, or I didn't really get to kind of, what's the term, like when you push your boundaries. I was just like kept in this like
Grow.
comfortable, yeah, I know.
Grow.
Yeah. Be ambitious for yourself.
Be ambitious. God, that word, ambition.
I know. I hate that was like a 4-letter word, growing up. Like you shouldn't be ambitious. You should aim to be as small as possible.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I feel like starting my esthetician business was what kind of catapulted all of this. When I look back on it now, like I was like, whoa, like I have a skill. I make people feel a certain way, and I can start this business because of what I can do. And like that, that I'm good enough and I'm capable of making something of myself, and for myself. And I feel like once I kind of had the courage to start it and kind of go all in, that's when I feel like my brain just kind of started like, okay, I want more. I want more for myself. I want more things. I want to have more goals. And that's definitely what started it. And I can't remember what the question was. Oh yeah, autonomy. Yeah, so that's kind of when I started realizing that I I knew that in my relationship that there was not going to be any of that growth, or encouragement for me to kind of pursue those things. And then when I went into therapy, my therapist really, really highlighted like your autonomy was taken away, and now it's your time to find yourself, stick up for yourself. And one of the biggest things was I remember her sitting down with me like one of my first few sessions. She's like, "What are your values? What are your core beliefs and morals?" And I was like, "I don't know." Because all I could think about was what we had been taught our whole life. So I was like, "I don't know. I have to figure it out."
Yeah.
Yeah.
I just had a therapist ask me like, what are your like core qualities? And I was like, my what? Say what now? And she's like, she listed off and I was like, yeah, some of those sound good. I think I'm something. She's like, no, I'm asking you. And I was like, I legitimately don't know. She's like, okay, well, what's your like sense of identity? Like, I don't know. I'm not allowed to have this. Yeah. We're in uncharted territories here.
Yeah.
Isn't that wild?
No, it's so crazy. And and it's so cool now, like even just being with her. She actually asked me the other day, and I was like, I told her, and I was like, she was like, you got there.
Oh, nice.
You give the rest of us hope that we'll get
I know,
there.
yeah.
We'll be autonomous someday. Damn. Okay. So I think this is a good spot to break and get into part 2 of like the deconstruction, leaving and what that looked like, and then kind of how all the things you've experienced for the first time. So let's pause, come back for part 2, and we will keep going with Portia's story.